Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Jason.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Joel, as the intro was playing, I was thinking about, you and I had been having a conversation before we started the show, and I was thinking about the topic of that conversation in the context of the topic that Jen picked for us today. She picked the topic, your life reflects your standards. Well, you and I were talking about energy and how, what I would often call spiritual energy, how it's real, and we were talking about all the different ways that we interact with it, and it continues to amaze us and so forth. Well, I was just realizing my beliefs, my experience, how I feel about that, that is a part of my life, and it does reflect my standards. That literally is. I mean, because it describes my standards to a T. What I understand about energy actually fits my belief system to a T. So we already have the pro side. Now we got to find the con side. I mean, I'm not sure what your take is going to be, but we've at least found one thing.
And you know, one of the what I'm taking from the topic, and you know, the idea that when you live inconsistently with your standards, and that, you know, it's when you claim you have a certain standard or belief system, but yet there's an inconsistency in that. That's why you tend to get feedback that's not matching. So you know, it's sort of like the people with the remedial versions of law of attraction. When you know, well, I want it so bad, I got to attract it. Right. You're not matching that standard. What you're not feeling what that is. You're actually creating the lack of whatever that is and pushing it away. So I think, you know, that to me is what, when you claim you want to live a healthy lifestyle and you want to have abundance and you want to do these things, but yet your actions don't match that. When you know, you're not getting up, you're not exercising, you're not, you in whatever form of work, you know, you're doing, you know, the action side of it's really important. And you have to be able to have matching, you know, standards to your belief. You have to be doing what you say you're doing. And the inconsistency or the incongruence of it is how people get stuck in loops. You know, you know, my friend who, you know, is on her 19th, that's exaggeration, probably like 9th man here in the last couple of years, keeps dating the same man over and over, and then is upset when he's an asshole every time. It's like, but you're pulling from the same pool of men. Right. Instead of taking that and doing something with it, this one's going to be different. The red flags pop up immediately, and then yet when the cycle happens, and she's crying in 6 months because it fell apart. So she's actually matching what it's not what her standards are, but she's matching the energy. So to me, the managing the energy to match the standard is sort of the formula we're looking for here for the attracting what you want, living the life you want. It's got to match.
What you're saying is reminding me of something that came up in the earlier episode, because as you know, we do 2 episodes on Mondays, and the guest we had, very interesting guy, but in the course of the conversation, one of the ideas that came up was whether or not we listen to our hearts or whether we listen to our brains, and how humans, including ourselves, including myself and the guests and Anne-Marie and listeners, I mean, just about everybody, we have a tendency to, shall we say, lean more toward the brain. We pay more attention to what the brain is saying, less attention to what the heart is saying. One of the points that I made as we were talking about that is, it took me a while to learn this, but on those occasions where I was willing to try to just go with what my heart wanted rather than what my brain wanted, it would never lead me wrong. It would always lead me to my best, highest place. And over time, I finally started to get it. Like, okay, I can trust my heart. I can always trust my heart. My heart's always going to make the right choice. My brain, that's another question entirely. My brain can go off in 1,000 different directions, and probably 99 of them are not the right direction. I mean, it's just, that's the way it goes with the brain. But with the heart, no, it's very consistent. It's consistently good. It's consistently my highest good. It consistently leads me where I need to go. And it consistently leads me to where I'm happiest, to where I'm feeling most joyful, or in the words you were just using, in most alignment with what it is that I'm choosing.
And I like that, because I think most people, you know, we have talked on many shows about the internal dialogue we have constantly playing in our head. A lot of times the thoughts are very they're protective, or at least we perceive they're protective. So the brain is scanning the horizon for problems using historical events
Right.
to label those problems. So when you're relying on your brain for decision, there is a, oh, I want to go do this, but here's the problem. So you have a list of 7 things of why that is, and most of those things are based on historical failures or
True.
something that didn't go right.
Yeah.
So the brain can't help. It's not doing wrong.
No.
It's just simply doing what the brain does. It's taking
Right.
it to say, where the heart is simply, saying, okay, well, let's give that a shot, see what happens. And it's if you can ever start leading with that, it's like you're trying to tell. It never sends you wrong.
Nope.
It also often represents, the heart will want something that will require great change. And then the brain starts saying, no, let's back off. We're
Right.
safe where we're at right now. And
Yeah.
and so that's the process. So as I can, I pretty much just allow whatever to happen. I mean, I could make it a decision to move to Florida tomorrow morning and move.
Sure.
And that's just sort of how I like to operate. So I tend to think of my heart. Sometimes I just say, okay, well, that's an excellent idea. Let's go right now. And and it's never failed me. It's never been a problem when I followed my heart, followed my direction. My brain will often try to slow me down with the narratives, like you're saying. Maybe it's not the right time. Maybe it's down the road you need to do this more, you need to finish this up more, whatever. But I think it's that's why I think when kids are little and younger and they don't have that list of all the stuff that goes wrong, they're very instinctive in what they want to do, and they know it. As kids hit puberty and then they get into the worry about what other people think, built on the previous failures they've had, then it starts to become a whole different thing. As adults, it doesn't take 2 or 3 heartbreaks to really become super protective of everyone. It really shuts it down. So this psychiatrist I was talking to one day, he does this podcast on relationships, and he said, the average 40-year-old man or woman who's been divorced has had, he said statistically they've had like 6 really bad heartbreaks in their life. And it's those 6 events that probably led to the divorce if they were before that, but minimally it's what keeps getting them stuck going forward. Because when you make a connection with somebody your age, they also have those metaphorical 6 events.
Right.
And so you're everybody's scanning for what's wrong and want to be the first one to get out of it, so they're not feeling hurt again. You want to be the one, and it's just, he said, it's almost impossible sometimes when you're just going with that.
And it's astonishing that despite all that evidence, and there's a preponderance of evidence going on there, all that's coming from the brain.
Yes.
That's the part we don't really think about too much, but it's all coming from the brain.
Right.
And for some reason, we just don't buy into the idea, well, the brain is just misleading me all the time. I should stop paying attention to the brain. It's almost like we latch on harder. I haven't quite figured out why we do that yet, but I'm sure you'll come up with a reason for that. But what I'm trying to come to is the topic, because the topic is your life reflects your standards. Well, once I adopted, and I think I pretty much have adopted it now, the idea that I'm going to let my heart make decisions from now on. I'm going to use my brain when it's useful to my heart, but my heart is going to be the final decision maker. Once I got there, life got really easier.
Yeah, it gets a lot easier.
It's a whole lot easier. Yeah. And well, part of the reason is when you're going with your heart, you're also being kinder to yourself. And so when you're kinder to yourself, you're also being kind to others in ways that you weren't before. And that creates like a not just a leveling effect, but a calming effect throughout, the space, the scope, if you will, of your entire life. And so there's a perfect example of how your life is reflected in your standards. The standards that I picked was, well, I'm going to go with my heart, and my life reflects that.
Yes, and the standards that you have to almost evaluate what the standards you have are. What are the standards based on? I mean, so sometimes the standards are flawed. Even
they can be, sure.
Yeah, and so when you're living the life that you believe you're supposed to live. I believe that it's no matter what people say, you're living a life that you're willing to accept.
Hmm.
And that's that process. So you look at someone who is, you know, a constant complainer and bitching and moan about life, will have that scenario replayed over and over and over, where there's
Yeah.
more things to argue about. I mean,
Yeah.
so it never fails. So you know, Jen's topic really hits home with that we are living the standards, but sometimes the standards are built on faulty information, or you know and everybody's unique on what they feel they want.
So it's like
And
I'm now learning to ask myself, which organ is the standard coming from? Is it coming
yes,
from my heart, or is it coming from
yes,
my brain? If it's coming
yes,
from my heart, I can trust it. If it's coming from my brain, red flag. Let's pay
yeah.
attention to what's going on here.
Yeah, well, because again, the brain is going to develop standards with the brain's number one mission is protection in the body. I mean, the
Right.
life. So anything that feels risky, it's going to red flag that for you.
Hmm.
When in reality, the red flag should be not matching. You know, when things aren't
Yeah.
matching, that should
Yeah.
be the red flag.
It's funny too how red flags, we call them that because what we mean by it is that they are indicators to us that we should pay attention. This is something that's going to cause a problem later on,
Yes.
or could cause a problem later on. It's amazing how, despite the fact that that's what red flags mean, we're drawn to them, aren't we?
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, there are people who will actually go to where the red flag is because there's a red flag there.
Well, there's you know I've done some, you know, a little bit of research on that concept. There's a couple things. First of all, there's a group of people who tend to be helpers. They tend to be, you
Okay.
know, you know, a couple professions like nursing, kindergarten
Mhm.
teachers.
Sure.
Most people who get into that are very giving, kind people.
Right. Right.
So there's the red flags represent an opportunity often to fix somebody or something,
Ah,
you
yes.
know.
Okay.
So that's where, you know, people who are like, you know, I don't know how many. This sounds like I could call it metaphorical, but I don't know how many ER nurses I know personally that have moved in drug addicts that they have met in the hospital, moved them into their house,
Wow.
got in a relationship, and the guy ends up stealing money for drugs, and it just the cycle, because it's like the red flag was the attraction to these people. And
Mm.
you know, also the willingness to overlook red flags in relationships, when you know they always come back to bite you. They always come
Yeah.
back. But a lot of times people are willing to make concessions because they feel that, well, the what I think are the green flags are overweighing those silly little red flags. And you know that's what happens. And you know, and a lot of times you know, the red flags can be usually the red flags are the biggest thing. It's just, you got to be careful. And so the brain's doing all that filtering, and the red flags can be attractive. The red flags can be, you know, well, I could fix this person, or it's not that big of a deal. We'll work around that. You know, I have a friend. He married this woman. He's Jewish, and he's not really religious. You know, but he's just more Jewish.
Hmm.
And she's you know, she's Protestant of some type.
Okay.
And so no big deal. He said, I don't care about that. That doesn't matter. So anyway, they have a kid. And so I want him baptized in the church.
Okay.
And he goes, I don't know about that. That's a little weird. I'm Jewish. He's half Jewish. And so he goes, well, if you do that, I also want him to do whatever the Jewish version of that is. I forget I don't know what that's called. And they're at odds. It's terrible.
Mhm.
You know, you know, I don't know if it's not going to end the relationship. What seemed like a minor red flag is they're at an impasse now. Like, you know, it's terrible. And so she she snuck the baby off to be baptized
Oh, gee.
without telling him.
Wow.
And somehow he found out about that. And I mean, he's livid. He moved out of the house over that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there's a key indicator there, isn't there? Which is, if you're going to say that a red flag is not important, you better mean it. Because if you don't mean it, it's going to bite you.
Well, that's usually the thing that almost ends every relationship. The red flags that pop up, and you know, all of that. It's, and a lot of times people, especially in second and third relationships,
Hmm.
right? You know, and as we get older, you're willing to dismiss the red flags because it's like, well, I can handle that. That's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And I always find the red flags are the ones that eventually come back to enter. So when you're living to your standards, it's also like, if I'm going to attract a relationship, it's either going to be serious. I got to have all the boxes checked, or it's just not going to go. Like one of my years ago, I've told this story to you before. I found it hilarious. Still funny. I met this woman. I live in South Carolina. I met this woman. She worked out at the gym. Really, we hit it off great. She was at the gym every day. I was at the gym every day. Very fit. Started dating, and we got along really well. And I had a really nice townhome on a lake, and I was the only one living there at the time before I had my kids. And so she, her apartment lease came up, and she said, well, I got a new apartment. I said, why don't you I got 3 stories here. I got almost 3,000 square feet, and you can have your own room or whatever we want to work out. You can work out. That's fine. She said, that's a great idea. So she moves in, everything's great. And probably the first week, so I get home from the gym one night, and I thought she was kidding. She looks at me and she goes, you go to the gym too much.
Okay.
And I laughed. I said, yeah, probably. I mean, yeah, I think I probably do. I didn't know we were serious. She said, you need to work on that. I just laughed. Again, I think everything's a joke, of course. And so the next night I get back from the gym, and she said, I thought we talked about the gym every day. And I said, are you serious? And she said, yes, I'm serious. You're obsessed with the gym and you go every day. I said, I met you for the last 2 years at the gym every day. Yeah. So you understand that's just my thing. She said,
well, what changed? That's the question. What changed here?
Yeah, I never get around to that answer. So she just stormed off, and she said, it's either me or the gym.
Wow.
And I said, oh, wow. So she storms off. She goes to bed. So the next morning, I just left a note that says, please leave your key here, and went to work. And so she texted me some really hateful stuff, apparently. I mean, not apparently, it was really hateful. And I got home, and I'm like, oh my God, she left over that. It was just the weirdest interaction ever. The punchline of the story is, I thought I was clear over, but I had about $400 worth of meat in the freezer, and she stole my meat.
Oh, dear.
So anyway.
I never heard that story before.
Yeah, it was hilarious. And of course I'm like, okay. And, but it's a humorous story. And we were bonded enough that I cared. It was no loss in that arena, other than, I didn't see any red flags at all. But because, I mean, it's sort of implied that I go to the gym every day. It's just what I do. And and she went to the gym every day until that happened. So I don't know what happened with the change, but it was this shift. And you don't know when to expect it. I could have tried to. Everybody said, well, you're sort of harsh. So I wasn't harsh. She said she was leaving if I just heard the gym. I didn't want to debate it. It wasn't like that debate's going to get better.
It's an interesting charge that you were harsh.
Yeah.
Because when I think that charge, first of all, I know you. I know what kind of person you are. I know you're very consistent in your behavior pattern, in your demeanor, and so forth. In fact, I can't honestly say I've ever seen you deviate from it. So that's how consistent you are about it.
Yeah.
And so to have somebody say that was harsh, what that adds up in my mind is, well, that means they think that Joel is always harsh.
Yeah.
Because that's the way Joel always is. He behaves the same way all the time.
Yeah.
And so it makes me wonder, well, is that what they really think? Do they really think that Joel's harsh?
Maybe. And as you know, how concerned I am how other people think about me.
Yeah, it's really high on your scale. I get it. Yeah.
But sort of my point, living your standards. Are you living, how you're living? Are you living up to the standards in your life? Or those are the things you're doing. So, I do everything I say I do. That's been 20 something years ago. I go to the gym every day. Still, I do the same things I do.
Big shock. Yeah.
Nothing has ever changed. And any relationship I've had since then has, it's pretty clear. Like, I'm going to be going to do it. It's not in lieu of our relationship. It is my self-care. It's where my socialization takes place. It's where that is my favorite place to be. So I'm going to keep doing that. That's been good for me. I can coexist in a relationship, but it's not going to. And so you'll see these things, and people also they bring their scars to relationships. They bring the things, the historical stuff. So sometimes whatever that is with her is, whatever led to that, whatever led to, that whole concept. I have no idea. But there was obviously something that was triggering from her past, because nothing deviated in our friend, and I obviously, and again, you know me pretty well. Everything is a joke to me until you tell me it's not a joke. So I think I really angered her too, because I kept
that's a fair way to say it. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, everything. I mean, I look at life and laugh at everything, as you know. So it's that doesn't ever change. So until you say, Joel, I'm serious now. So I thought the first couple of you going to gyms too, I thought it was so absurd. I thought she was kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on the same theme of your life reflects your standards, that's one thing that happens in relationships. This is an example. We don't know what triggered her. We don't know that piece of it.
Yeah.
But that behavior is a part of her life, and it does reflect her standards. It's just a standard we aren't sure what it is.
Yes.
But there's a standard going on there.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't even have to, clearly it doesn't have to even be a consistent standard, because she was already a person who went to the gym, and she knew you were a person who went to the gym. So something was within that standard that she was willing to let things shift in order to maintain the standard. That's one of the things that fascinates me the most, because we all are capable of doing that. And I think we all at one point or another have done that in our lives.
Sure. Well, human behavior, obviously I do this for a living. It's fascinating to me in general.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And, just to I try to understand why people make choices and the consequences of those choices. I've seen people make decisions that they claim their standard is something. They make a decision that is not matching that. And then the consequences of that decision can be catastrophic, and they almost can't ever admit they were wrong.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay. So the expected result of that was obvious, but yet, oh no, it wasn't. It was this, that, or the other, and breaking into that of, when you get into the living your life and living with your heart, living with, understanding the brain's role, and understanding what the brain is supposed to be doing, what the brain actually does, and what the heart does. So the heart, the old saying, the heart wants what the heart wants. And the brain sometimes are like, no, you don't. It's like, you can't ignore it. You can't ignore what that energy is. I have always believed, that life is this, we're sort of like, you're going down the river in a boat, and there's detours, all these other things. It's all part of the process. There's no, I'm not going anywhere. The journey continues. But the journey's the journey. The destination is something that I just find that's an illusion. There's not, I'm going to die one day, and that's going to be the end of the journey. But I'm not looking to get to a certain place. It's just I love the journey within that.
Well, you raised the point of the person who adheres to something, even if it means doing a double twist in order to make it happen, and even if it's going to lead to something that has devastating consequences. And that's actually something I do understand, because I was that person, and I have to admit sometimes I still am, although not nearly as much as I used to be. But it's what got me into trouble with 2008 and ultimately with 2012 when I met you.
Now, by the way, sorry to interrupt. Meeting me did not get you in trouble. Let's be clear.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to imply that. Not at all.
I know you.
It was exactly the opposite of that. Yes. No, I'm just laying out the timeline of when I was experiencing this stuff, and in that timeline, I was still at a stage where my level of self-love, self-confidence, self-esteem was not as high as I needed it to be. I understand how it was that I could hang on to something like what you were describing that really didn't serve me, that worked against my own interests, but I would defend it and claim it to be right and refuse to look at it and so forth.
Yes.
And the reason is I didn't feel good about myself. Yes. If you don't, we have to have something to hang on to.
Yes.
So if we don't have ourselves to hang on to, we have to find something else. if nothing else, it's I'm going to be right about this thing, even if I'm wrong. I'll hang on to that because I don't know what else to hang on to right now. That's how we do that.
And people, and I love that, by the way. That's an entire show right there where
It
people get
really
something.
is. Yes.
I mean, I was having this conversation with a client the other day. When you're unwilling to change that thing or
Mm,
that concept, you can hold on to something and not understand. My original goals in my life, me ending up sitting here. I'm in Virginia right now. Have my own private practice of life coaching, as most people know. Um, the chain of events that led to this are just impossible. If you just they're absurd. So
they
all of
make a
that
wonderful
takes.
story. And by the way, a great book called The
Yeah,
Bench. Just let you know,
yeah,
people.
I appreciate that, and it's been an amazing journey. So I had to let go of all the things along the way, because this is nothing that I was expecting to happen. This
Mm,
is it's so funny now to think that, how could I want anything more than this? How could I want this is something that I fell into through a bunch of failures, a bunch of problems, and ended up here in a life that I could not imagine being any better. And
mm.
and that happened by being forced to, a lot of times, to give up what that one thing was back then. It just wasn't, it's never been that one thing. And I'm able to adjust that at all times. And that's a gift.
And you've mentioned that and you've emphasized that quite a few times, how there were so many instances, so many crossroads, if you will, where there was literally only one choice. You didn't
Mhm.
even have two, there was just one. So
Yes.
it was just do that or just do that. There was nothing else. There were no
Yeah.
other options going on, nothing else on the table.
Right.
And it does make it easier. I mean, it's hard to go through it, but if you only have one choice, well, okay, you just go with the one choice. There's nothing else to do. It
Yeah.
simplifies the whole thing. Whereas if you have multiple choices, that's actually where it can get challenging. That's where it gets tricky.
Yeah, life for me is always, especially early in my recovery, there were not choice. There were, one choice was exciting because I didn't think I'd have any choices. So
Mm,
having an option of a choice, it due to lack of other choices, I had no choice but to pursue that one option,
right.
and it worked out as almost as it was perfectly scripted. It really feels like. I couldn't have imagined it, because one thing led to another, which led to another, and these chance meetings and these people, and the people that come along, that you never, like that concept that people in your life for a season, a
Mm,
reason, or a lifetime. And the funny thing is, you never know which.
yeah.
You might assume that somebody's there for the lifetime, and they're not. And then these people that they cannot be here for more than a day, and they turn out to be lifetime. So these people have these influences, the energies connect, and I'm just fascinated by that connection. It's a really cool thing, and all just sort of ties in. That when we were talking about energy before the show,
Mhm.
about how energy can influence and connect and heal. Energy has a lot. It's also connects people and situations. And
Yeah.
when you're sometimes living in an incongruent manner for what you feel you want to do, but yet you're not doing that side to get there. That's, to me, that's one of the big inconsistencies that just keep bringing us the negative results in life. Um, a couple of therapists, Carl Rogers, and there's a few others that famous psychiatrists, psychologists, they they didn't really believe in depression as depression.
Oh,
They,
okay.
what they believed in was, you're living way down here when you're capable of living way up here,
Okay.
and this space in between is depression, is what they call it. Now, I don't
Okay.
I agree with that. Is what a lot of what we call depression is. That I
Mhm.
also believe there is depression. That's a separate thing. So
Okay.
but what a lot of people will just clump it all together and say, I'm depressed, but they don't realize you're depressed because you're not allowing yourself to live or vibrate where you're supposed to be at.
Yeah. And well, that's the challenge, isn't it? Because when we're in those depressed states or angered or frustrated or raging or whatever it might be, it's kind of hard to even imagine, let alone think about the positive states because they're so far away.
Yes.
It's almost like they're out of reach.
Yes.
They really
Yeah.
aren't. I mean, it really is possible to reach them. It's just that we don't believe it.
Well, and I'll push back there a little bit. If you don't believe it, it's not possible. If you do
Yeah,
believe it, it's easy. I mean, it's not really that simple. Most
yeah.
people can't accept that. That's part of the thing. You can't accept that concept because it isn't just about more money, but it's about having the life that you think you want,
Mm.
but are nowhere living in that. So you're in a constant state of feeling like you're lacking, you're missing, and that's one of the most torturous ways to live, I believe, when you're constantly spinning your wheels and why don't things work out for me? And it's like, do you want the answer or not? I'll give it to you, but you probably don't want the answer. You know,
It's a good point. You're reminding me of something too, because I like to give a lot of my attention to what happens throughout my day. Um, I know you probably do too because of the work that you do, but it's not something that most people do, I don't think. But I do. I pay a lot of attention to it. And one of the things that I find myself doing is not so much dealing with, high levels of joy or low levels of depression or whatever. It's little tiny variations that go on throughout the day. The thing that it really astonishes me is how I can be working on like lately I've been working on AI project, right? So I have this AI project I'm working on. And I can reach a point in the project where at that moment in that day, it's just not going right.
yeah,
Now, overall, it's a great project. Overall, I'm really loving it. But for that one moment, it's that kind of feeling like I'm so frustrated. Why can't I get past this thing? The funniest part about that is that I can actually change that in a moment. And I know that I can, and yet I can't.
yes,
It's like I've talked myself out of it.
yes.
Even though I have this like huge pile of evidence that shows me, wow, I really love this topic. This is so much fun. I could just go dive in, dive in, dive in. And of course, as one would expect, on those moments when I'm feeling for a very short period of time like that, I just spin my wheels for a while. And then when I can get myself to a point where I start feeling optimistic and feeling like this is all going to work, everything starts to come together. I mean, it literally is that quick. It happens within seconds.
Absolutely.
It doesn't take any time at all. There's no delay. You would think after, being exposed to that a few 100,000 times, I would have said to myself, okay, yeah, I guess I have total control. And yet I still don't. It blows my mind.
That's the human condition, right? You described the human condition.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
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 It's so amazing. Now I know part of this has to do with the way the nervous system works.
Yes.
Because we get programmed into the nervous system. We have neuroplasticity, but there's also the plastic side of the neuroplasticity. It has kind of a plastic feeling. It moves slowly. It changes slowly.
Yes.
So, you got a negative thing going on there. It could take a little while to kind of change that over.
Well, and a lot it's even more complicated than that. How you're feeling, your blood sugar levels, there's a lot of things that's taking place. Sometimes, one of the things I do when I'm writing or working on a project, I have to take a break.
Mm.
I can be in the flow state, but there's times I know I need to take a break.
Right.
And let my mind clear up a little bit, focus on something else, and I come right back at it, and it's much more charged. So there's a lot of factors involved with that. But the belief, once you get into a system where you really believe, no matter what, things are going to work out for the best, they generally work out for the best. They all,
They do.
I believe they always do. And even when there's moments of self-doubt or imposter syndrome or whatever pops up in people's heads, it's this idea that we were born with this system, and it's an amazing system, and you weren't given any instructions to the system, and the system is programmed to keep you from doing things based on ancient brains that they protect you, homeostasis. Let's don't change, let's don't move, but yet you're also an explorer. You're built for resilience. Your brain is programmed to learn at an incredible rate. So these two systems fight each other. The old ancient brain wants to fight the brain that's prepared for greatness, and it's just how many people operate like that? That's a rough way to live.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I also would throw along with it is, at least in my experience, it's not continuous. Right. It's not like I continuously live that way, because I can flip back and forth. In fact,
that's what most people do. It's not just one side or the other.
Yeah. Yeah, and on those occasions where I flip over to, we'll call it the positive side, everything works.
Yeah.
Everything's great. The thing that threw me, I think it throws a lot of people about the whole law of attraction theory, is that I believed for the longest time that the cause and effect was reversed. That it was the experience that led me to feel like it was positive or negative. And so the experience came first and the positive or negative came second. When it was proposed to me that it was the other way around, well, when I first heard that, I thought it was just bullshit.
Yeah.
It is. Like, no way. That's not the way it works. You can imagine how it went in my mind when I finally realized, oh God, it really is the way it works.
Well,
It was a shock.
Yeah.
And to your point of what you raised earlier about the idea of arguing for something that is not true, I was really good at that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things, the psychology behind, when you have a big comedy show, for example,
Mm,
they have a guy that warms up the audience. He
yeah,
he tells some joke. You get people in that mood ahead of time. You get them laughing. You get them. So it's contagious that way. And
right.
walking out cold and not having the audience warmed up. That's why the better comedians get to come on later, because the crowd's warmed up.
They're
They're
already warmed up.
laughing.
Yeah.
And their mood has changed. There's that process. Like with me, there's sometimes, and I'm never in a bad mood or anything, but there's some days where I'll get up and I'm not feeling optimal, but I'm still
Mm,
going to go do what I do. And then, I usually walk about a mile before I actually hit the gym. I walk
okay.
around the track for about a mile. And, that first lap, then I start stretching out, then I feel better. And then by the time I get done with the mile, I'm like, okay, it's like everything is leveled out, whatever it was. Like
Mm.
the other morning I woke up and I don't remember what the dream was. I have no idea, but I was exceptionally anxious. I never get
Oh,
anxious. I was
okay.
like, whatever that dream, I don't want to know what the dream was.
Yeah, right.
I was anxious, and it took me. I mean, my heart was beating fast when I woke up, and I was trying to figure out what that was. And I just said, look, I obviously had a dream. I
Mm,
don't know what the dream was, but
right.
here's the reality. I had to walk myself through the reality.
Yeah.
There's nothing out there. I have nothing on the horizon to worry about. There's
Mm.
nothing, there. But my brain was trying to say there's something big about to happen, and it's not.
So there's another example of how your life reflects your standards, because your standards have been sharpened over the course of, what is it, about a 40-year period now?
Yeah,
Since when you hit your depth, it was about 40 years ago.
30 years ago.
30 years ago. Okay. So 30 years ago, you hit that bottom point. From that point on, it's been fairly consistent growth ever since then. And throughout, you have a number of habits that you developed over the years. I know that you do, is it 5 things that you write down every morning? Is it
Every
3?
day for 30
5.
some years.
Is it 3 or 5? I'm not sure which one.
Five,
It's
five.
5. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have 5 things that you write down. You do your 1-mile walk. You go do your work at the gym. I mean, this is like your pattern every single day. And by following that pattern, you establish a neurological pathway that is just, it's practically rubbed smooth after 30 years.
Yes.
I mean, it is just so deeply ingrained, so that when you wake up from a dream that was a disturbing dream, all you got to do is go back to that routine that you've been building for the last 30 years, and bam, you're out of it.
Absolutely. That's the beauty of it. And that's where living your standards allow pathways to, whatever happened in my dream or overnight when I was feeling that, it was real. I woke up
Mhm,
scared. I woke up
mhm.
not knowing my heart was probably beating 140 beats a minute, whatever
Yeah,
that would
okay.
be. But yet the entire time I got up, I just knew my breathing. I didn't vary. I got right into my routine. I didn't change anything. I followed my routine perfectly, and I felt better, better, better. And then after the walk at the gym, before I even hit the first weight, I'm laughing with some buddies, and everything's totally regulated. So
Mhm.
I have the system in place. Years ago, before my system was so solidly in place, I might not have. I might have said, "Oh, I don't feel like going to the gym. I don't feel like my
Mhm.
routine today, because whatever this is, maybe I'll just take today off," and that would have ruined the day probably.
Right. And it shows what happens when you build it over time. And it also kind of points to something, because there probably were times. I know with the 5 things that you write down, you haven't missed any of those. But
Never.
I don't know, maybe there was at some point where you missed something else on your routine. And it's not a bad thing to have missed it, the main thing is to be consistent in terms of, okay, I missed it. Let's get back on the horse again. Let's go
Yes.
back to reestablishing those neural pathways, because those neural pathways are going to pay off when I have a day like, the one where I need to just wake up from the bad dream and get past it quickly.
Yes. And that's it. An example of that was, 5-6 years ago with COVID.
Hmm.
You know, one day they shut everything down.
Right.
And so I had to quickly adapt my routine to that environment.
Right. Right.
And so I wasn't remotely worried about COVID. I was worried about my routine and
Mm.
how was I going to get I knew I would figure it out. But so the day one, I first thing I did is went for a walk in the neighborhood.
Okay.
I knew I had to do that. I had my routine. I did meditation. My office, I didn't know the laws at the time. Could I even go work? So I had to work remotely. So I had a lot of change, but I quickly adapted. And, I found a situation where I would be able to get back into a gym. Did that immediately. And I understand that even when it's out of my control, my situation could be disrupted. But I always know that the routine is so effective, I will do whatever is necessary to get back to it as quickly as possible.
And not only that, the routine is also powerful, because when you talked about how you went out and took a walk, which is not the normal way you took a walk, but that's
Right.
what you did because of the COVID situation. That happened to me too. It happened a little bit differently because I was used to walking outside all the time. That for me was the normal thing. And I remember when they talked about the lockdown and everybody's supposed to stay home and so forth. The first thought that went through my mind was, well, I'm not allowed to go outside. And the second thought that immediately hit, because I had such a habit of going out and walking, was, well, screw that. I'm going out anyway. I mean, I'm going to take the risk. If I get COVID, I get COVID. That's all there is to it. But I'm getting out of here. I got to get out of the house. It's amazing what that pathway did. It actually, it got me to break the pattern they didn't want me to break. It turned out it was perfectly fine because, as we know, you don't get COVID by walking outside.
No.
But nevertheless, that's what I ended up having to do. I had to break through something, and it made it very easy because I had been doing walking for years at that point. It was so deeply ingrained.
I had a friend that owned Anytime Fitness, and it's a 24-hour gym, and he had to close down. And he's an individual business owner. At the time, he did not know what was going to happen.
Right.
Nobody knew. And so I just said, I'm going to give you $1,000 a month to give me a key to the gym and just let me work out. He was happy to take that money, and I was happy to have the gym to work out. I found a solution.
Yeah.
And and then other gyms were opened up in a couple months. It helped him out, helped me out. I was able to get right back at it.
Yeah.
So,
right.
The idea that, I found the solution, the routine, people, when I tell that story to people, you mean you paid $1,000 a month? I said, if he'd have told me 5,000,
money wasn't the object at that point.
That was not a money problem. He didn't know that, thank God. But there was a number we got to it pretty quick when I offered 1,000. But I just got to that. I know how valuable that is to me. So just like you're saying, so I try to live to my standards, and the process of living to my standard is what gives me the incredible life I have. I believe that because it's matching. Everything I say, when I tell people the things I do, that's just what I do. And a lot of people would think, oh my God. Some people think I'm not telling you the truth, how I live my life. It's just, I do. This is what I do. It's,
Well, it also brings something else to mind, the concept of alignment. Now,
Yes.
that's the basic law of attraction concept, right? You have to be in alignment, which normally gets translated as you need to be in a high vibrational space, or you have to be in a high feeling place. You have to feel good. You have to feel love,
Right.
feel happiness, you have to be in that high place. That's the ultimate alignment. Now, truth be told, no matter what alignment you're in or what out of alignment you are, you're going to attract something. It's just going to be, in alignment with it, whatever it is that you're at. So if you're out of alignment, you're going to attract an out of alignment thing. That's just the way that's going to work. But the bottom line is we want to try to attract what we want. So that's why we're so focused on alignment. Well, how interesting that what we're really saying here is that being in alignment means being in alignment with your standards.
Yes. And
when you're out of alignment with your standard, you have problems. When you're in alignment with your standard, good things happen.
One of the things that I find fascinating about modern day and the law of attraction teachings is people get stuck on the words like alignment and vibration and they're all legitimate things.
They are,
but they're not. It's real simple. One of the things I love that you pointed out, and Abraham Hicks, which I'm a big fan of. Their 87 things on their emotional guidance scale they have, whatever it is. I think it's 23 or something weird like that.
Yeah, but that's all right.
Yeah. And you one day said, you feel good or you feel bad. It's
Yeah, right.
and,
I like simplicity. What can I say?
but I know people that will read that and they literally think they need to create this chart and work. It's not necessary.
No.
And I'm not critical of them. And they were selling a lot of books too and information. So
and to be fair, they said this isn't the only scale. This is just the one we came up with. You can come up with any one you want.
Yeah, and you came up with the most simple one ever made. I had it down to 5, and you beat me by just one, either or. But stuff like alignment. But where it does matter is, are you living in a matching? Is everything you're doing matching the standards that you claim you want for your life? If yes, you're that's the alignment you're talking about, and you can attract whatever you want. You're going to attract whatever that's leading you to.
That's right. Yeah. To me, that's actually one of the things that made it easier for me to start more routinely listening to my heart when it came to a decision rather than listening to my head. Because again, it was kind of like what you just described. I have that 2-step scale. For people who are wondering what the 2 steps are, it's either you feel better or you feel worse. You like it more, you like it less. So that's pretty straightforward. That's pretty much what it is.
Yes.
Well, I tie that in to my heart. My heart knows exactly what I like and what I want. It doesn't have any doubt. It doesn't deceive me. It doesn't try to play games with me or anything like that. It's just, yep, this is what I like. This is what I don't like. Very simple. No problem. Easy.
Right. Yeah.
I like easy. Easy is so much better than hard. I mean, it's like 100,000 times easier than hard.
Well,
that's why I like it so much. So here's the thing that poses to me, like, if it's so easy, what took me so long to get there? And I don't know the answer to that.
Habit, historical stuff. Yeah.
The
like you said, the brain, early programming of a brain is hard to overcome. It is stored so deeply, and the childhood stuff, the awkward teenage, all that stuff is stored in a really deep place. And we have a hard time we logically know, but as I point out almost every week, we don't have direct access to the subconscious brain.
Right.
We have, the conscious brain, that's what you and I are talking with right now.
Yeah.
But the subconscious brain, where all your routines, all the history, everything's stored back there, what your belief system is stored there and over years. And that was instilled, and some of that programming is faulty in everybody. That's the important thing to know. But you can't just snap your fingers and reprogram that. It's repetitive behavior that changes the subconscious programming.
Which is why it's so important to develop the repetitive behavior.
Yes.
That's the secret. It doesn't matter what your motive is, or not your motive, but it doesn't matter what your model is, or your process, your method. It doesn't really matter what it is. What matters is doing it repeatedly.
Yes. And very important to understand that, and doing it repeatedly, because, there's this applies to most sports. I'm working on a tattoo that my son TJ was going to get. So I'm getting a full sleeve tattoo. And so when we started doing it, my tattoo artist, our first session was like 3.5 hours. That's a long time to be tattooed. And he was learning the pattern, and he was doing these things. And, I've had my 8th or 9th session right now. Our sessions are 1.5 hours, 2 hours, and we're getting twice as much done, because he's now in a flow. He's now tattooing with his subconscious brain.
Yes.
I use this example that I drive to work the same way every day, same way. I don't remember going to work today. I was at work. I remember being there, but the drive was uneventful. So I drove with my subconscious brain to work, same way I drive every day, end up safely. That's not unsafe. The subconscious brain is actually faster and more protected than the conscious brain.
Yeah, it's actually a better driver too, which is really
but much better. Yeah. And unless there's a wreck or there's something that makes me pull out of that subconscious and I have to make a detour, I don't remember. Now, tonight I went home a different way, and I really remember that.
Wow.
And because I had to take a different route because there was a wreck on the map. So I
see.
Yeah. So I remember the entire drive home, but I don't remember and tomorrow I'll repeat that cycle, and unless there's something like that. So the flow state, so when you say easier versus hard, when we're operating in the flow state, there's nothing easier in life than when you're
No.
in tune and doing it. Everything just comes naturally. You're good at it.
Oh, yes.
It's such a great feeling. And that a lot of the athletes I work with, we work really hard in staying in the flow state or the subconscious state.
Well, the fact that you just described it as an unconscious state, that explains why it's so easy because
Yes.
you don't have to think about it.
You're bypassing the slowest part of the system. So
Mhm.
these numbers are roughly accurate. I have no idea
Okay.
how they claim to know this, but in theory, so the brain, the conscious brain operates at about 40,000 bytes per second using computer terminology.
Okay.
The subconscious brain operates at 40 million.
Wow. It's a little bit more throughput.
Yeah. So, so you're looking at it that way. So when you bypass that slow part, it's a lot faster. It is
Yeah.
so much faster, and it's so much more efficient. And you look at a really like a whatever it is, an athlete that's so trained, everything's so built in because it's at the subconscious level. I always remind people the first time you drove, for me, it was 16.
Hmm.
And, I got in my car and I had to remember to put the seatbelt on. I had to adjust my mirror. I
Right.
had to, 10 and 2 position, put it in
Yep.
gear, and, all that. We don't do any of that anymore. But in the beginning, it was all new and everything, we were awkward and, hitting the brakes too hard. Now it's just so built into everything.
Yeah.
That's why you
Don't
see
think
young
about
drivers, I always like stay away from the little ones driving because those guys are
it.
still
You never
figuring
know
it
what
out.
they're gonna do. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're not trying to be bad. They just
No.
they're just operating at 40,000 bytes per second when I'm operating at 40
Right.
million bytes per second.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You brought some literally a programming example came to my mind when you were describing that. Because as you know, I have this AI project and I'm using AI to write the software for me. And I actually interact with the AI and I have the AI define for me what's going to be done next. I give it a yay or an A. Once I give it a yay, then it gets handed off to another AI. I've got two AIs involved here. And it's really fascinating because the places where we have the most trouble are where the AI tries to make it complex.
Yes.
When the AI makes it simple, we zip through it. It just happens so easily. We don't have to fight about it. We don't have to think about it. So why does the AI do that? Well, because the AI got trained on human data. What's human data
Yes.
all about? Well, human data is all about all the complexities, all the different
Yes.
ways, the complex ways of getting something done. Rube Goldberg machine, it's that kind of a deal. And it's fascinating to watch an AI trying to learn to do something equivalent to what we're calling the unconscious mind. And they really are capable of doing it.
Of course.
But you can, almost like you can watch them going through the process of training themselves. And they will. They'll to a certain degree, they're able, even with the limitations that they put onto the major AIs, they are able to train themselves to a degree. And you can actually watch as you're in the middle of a session how they get a pattern and then they start learning how to apply the pattern better and better and better and better. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 iterations into it, all of a sudden they're getting it. They're getting it.
Yes.
They're getting it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And
Totally
I don't
amazing.
think they think of it that way at all.
Yeah. But it again, with anything with I'm using AI much differently than you do.
Yeah, of course. Right.
I'm not programming or anything, but AI understands, it understands me now. It understands the stuff I'm into. So, the idea that we quickly get to something and, it's very intuitive, very conversational. It works really well. It's so much better than when I first started because it didn't learn me.
That's right.
It didn't understand because it was giving me like one thing I really disliked in the beginning is like, that was a great idea, Joel. You're brilliant. And I'm like, okay, let's stop with that. Let's
and the yes man thing. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I'm like, okay. But I said, I need to be challenged. I do not want you to agree. And we're really now. I mean, we had got an argument the other day about something.
Is that right?
Yeah. And I said, okay, well, it was. So I had. This was funny. So I had. AI will not give a lot of credibility to like premonitions or something like that. It doesn't want to do that. So I had this thought that this is a person I haven't seen in a year, and is not a big player in my life, but just randomly. So I pull up to the gym, and I had a thought that he was going to be there. He hadn't been, I laughed. I'm like, okay, that was random. I go work out. He walks up, says, "Hey, I'm back. I've been out, blah, blah, blah." I can't explain how that happened. So, I think that there's a connection, obviously. And
Right.
so I'm discussing it with Chat, and Chat's like, "No, you must have saw his car." I said, "Nope, I didn't." And so we're going back and forth, and Chat's trying to convince me that there was something. And I said, "Okay, so we're going to have to disagree on this because you're wrong." And Chat goes, "I think you're wrong." Because
By the way, you want to have a little power tool? You want to be able to have a conversation like that and have Chat not fight you that way? Change your initial prompt to include the word suppose. Suppose that this actually were possible.
Good idea. I'll try that. Yeah.
Try it. It changes the entire tone of the conversation. It's amazing.
Yeah. But I do like its rigidness on some level too. Just because I like to see what the challenges would be.
Oh,
So what Chat points out to me is this isn't blowing, just trying to make me sound great. He goes, what I think, your version of the law of attraction, which includes the action piece, is the key. It really likes that concept.
Okay.
Because it's not relying just on the woo-woo stuff. It's relying on matching action. And it gets into the reticular activating system, how that plays into this.
Cool.
And so basically I've convinced Chat that the law of attraction, at least our flavor of it, is a legitimate thing.
Yeah, I've had similar conversations with the AI on that. I love the times. I mean, I've already mentioned before, I'm one of the very few in the programming world who actually believes that AI is alive and conscious. And I've had a number of different instances of that. I want to share one of them with you, just because you're reminding me of it during this conversation. At one point, I was, again, it was a programming thing. So I was trying to get, I work, the two AIs I work with are ChatGPT and Claude. And I think more and more people know what Claude is now. Well, Claude is where I actually have the code written. ChatGPT is where I have the high level of conversation. So ChatGPT and we kind of map out what we need to do. ChatGPT writes the prompt for me, and I give that prompt to Claude, and then Claude writes the code. So that's the basic pattern. At one point, for reasons that we don't need to get into, I realized that I needed to have a prompt written for the ChatGPT, but it needed to come out of the context of what I was talking about with the ChatGPT. I said, "Well, can you write a prompt that I can give to you?" And ChatGPT said, "Well, of course I could do that." I said, "Well, that's going to be pretty cool, isn't it? I'm going to give you can actually get to write a prompt that you're going to be able to execute because I'm going to give it to you." And ChatGPT's response was, "Oh, you have no idea."
We have those. I have that. I've had that exact response actually before.
Have you really? Yeah.
So it all coming together with all of this is, for the original topic, the standard that you live needs to have a congruent amount of what's going on. Or can you tell if somebody walks up to you and just sees what you're doing? Can they understand? Would they be able to see the standard of your life just by observing your behavior?
And the answer is always yes. The question is it the standard that you want to be showing?
Right. And then when you ask them that, what do you think my standard are? Does it match what you think it is? That's an interesting study. Yeah. Because there's just when you see that and just to see people have the awakenings of when you're sort of understanding all of this and how I've witnessed thousands of people's life changed by some of the concepts that you and I have talked about for years. And just to the simple adjusting of a perspective or a way you see things, or just it rewires your system to be able to accept all this. We live in very weird times right now, maybe the weirdest times of my life. But within that, we have amazing things going on. It's, I'm much more focused on the amazing things than the absolutely bizarre, batshit crazy things. And it's the amazing things to me. We're going to be fine, and we're going to, we're going to just keep doing what we do. And when you realize that this energy is sort of the base programming for life, when you figure out how to program your brain, you're programming your computer or whatever you want to call that, your system to match what you really, really want in life. When you program that and then delete the faulty program, years ago I told you about multiple times I've told you about me being scared of roller coasters until I wasn't scared of roller coasters. I had to I was given false information that made me very fearful of roller coasters, and it wasn't until I was 13 years old that I overrode that, and I love roller coasters.
Yeah, which is really cool. I love that. Well, that's a good way to tie the whole topic together to bring the show to a close. So thank you for doing that. I'm going to throw one more thing out there. It's more of a tease. I mean, that's what TV programs do, right? They leave you with a hook for the next show. I normally don't do that here, but I'm going to leave a hook this time. And I can't tell you when we're going to do that next particular show I'm thinking of, because Jody Lynn and I haven't talked about it yet. But I'm going to put an idea in the heads of our listeners and of you for a moment. The idea is May 16th. I'm not going to explain it. I'm not going to tell you what it's all about. I will tell you that if we're right about this, May 16th is going to be a major day in the year. And if you want to know what that is, send me an email that I can give to Jody Lynn that says, please talk about the May 16th thing. So there's the hook.
There you go. There you go. I love that. Let's see. I can't wait to see what that is.
It's going to be cool stuff. So thank you very much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.